what I recommend is the standard for a meditation practice that is a practice that is intended to produce the results over time, which is the results are that you begin to experience yourself differently. You begin to experience your true nature. You begin to identify yourself as the awareness instead of your personality. You begin to identify yourself with the awareness of what's happening instead of what you're thinking about what's happening, because what you're thinking about what's happening is being delivered by a system that's corrupt. By a system that's corrupt. What do I mean by that? Well, if when you were born, say you were born in Italy, and you were born to Italian parents, right? If we were to take you as a baby away from your parents in Italy and brought you here to Philadelphia and have you be raised by somebody here, right? You would be speaking English. You would be a Philadelphian. You would have the view of the world from here. You would have the view of the world that was given to you by the way your parents were, and that conditioning would be internalized, right? So you would literally be being the child of those parents, even though your real parents are in Italy, and if we had left you there, you'd be speaking Italian, and you'd have a point of view from Italy. Right? So that conditioning that got put into your brain is dependent upon where you were born and who your parents were and what language people speak there and what the point of view from that place on the planet is. And that's what's running in your head that you call you. That can't be that efficient and effective because that gets passed along from parent to child, right? And then it gets passed along from collective society to individual, right? So you have a program running in your head that's the program of the collective society you grew up in, and it's the program of the parents that raised you. And you call that you. And that's not very effective, right? It's a corrupt program because it's designed to have you survive. That's the programming that has been passed down to us from the caveman, you know, to survive. Not a bad program because without it, we wouldn't be here right now, right? The problem with it is that it's too efficient and too effective. It will have you survive by considering everything that you come into contact with a threat, which means that your system has to be in a state of readiness at all times, which means you're burning up energy as if somebody's going to attack you soon, right? And you're preoccupied. You're preoccupied with paying attention to that thought activity, because part of your conditioning is to be conditioned to believe that the voice in your head is you. You were conditioned to believe that, weren't you? They call it thinking. You know, oh, I'm just thinking. The voice in my head, that's me thinking, right? But if you slow down, you start paying attention to that voice in your head, you'll discover that it's ruthless. It says terrible things about you, right? It's ruthless. It judges and evaluates everything, right? And the other thing about it that's obvious is it doesn't seem to care about whether you're happy, does it? No, it just keeps telling you what to do, and a lot of that has to do with protecting yourself, right? Avoiding threats to you, right? Protecting yourself and seeking pleasure. We call that pursuing happiness, right? Protecting yourself and seeking pleasure. So that's the program, right? So anybody that you come in contact with, even if you love them and you trust them, it's only a matter of time before they say something or do something that in your system represents a threat, right? And then you get defensive and attack them. They had no idea why you're attacking them, so their system goes off and they attack you back, right? And then lawyers get rich. That's the way the system works, right? So if you don't, and that's called suffering. You suffer when you experience your life that way. You suffer when you experience that you're the voice in your head because it never stops. It's always complaining, right? Doesn't let you sleep, right? It's always catastrophizing everything, you know. Oh, it's awful, right? And you live in that world. You get to live in a thought world that is presenting you with that version of reality. And it's taken to be the truth. It's taken to be the truth. So almost all of the 8 billion people on the planet believe that's the way it really is. You and I are really separate. We're separate from reality. We're separate from the world. It is very scary. It is very threatening, right? So we should get ourselves some guns and we should not trust anybody because they might be out to get us, right? And so it goes on. You become paranoid, you become neurotic, right? And you're living in this state of stress and tension every single day, you know, pursuing happiness, although you never actually experience it, because the personality that you take yourself to be cannot be happy. This is very important to understand. This is the essence of why these teachings are so critical. Because either you're going to be here for a set period of time, considering yourself to be inhabiting a physical body, considering yourself to be the voice in your head, and you will be pursuing happiness for a set period of time, trying to avoid suffering and trying to avoid being killed or being threatened. And then the body will drop, and that'll be the end of your life. In the meantime, during that entire time, you were never here. You were only in relationship to a thought process in your brain. You were never actually in the world. And so you never actually had an experience of the world. You had an experience of a version of the world that's happening in your head all the time. That's the only life you've been living. You've been dreaming a dream that's being presented to you in your head all the time by the voice, right, telling you what's going on and so forth. You've been living in that dream. But you didn't know it was a dream. You thought it was reality, just like the 8 billion people on the planet. And so we're doing the best that we can in the situation that we find ourselves in. And that's why we have to have nuclear weapons. We have to have plenty of guns, right? And we have to all be paranoid, because it's not paranoia. The fear is real. People are out to get me, right? And this is what you see on the news. This is the reality that we're all living with, and it's called reality. It's believed to be the truth. What these practices and teachings will allow you to discover that that's not so. That what your brain took to be the truth was nothing but a download. It's nothing but a program that got downloaded in your brain. And because you're part of a tribe that believes in the download, believes that the download is reality, right? You've been living your life that way. Right? You've been living your life that way. And it hasn't been fun. There's a lot of suffering going on there because your expectations seldom get met and you don't feel happy. You don't feel relaxed. You don't feel calm. You keep pursuing happiness by trying to get more stuff, get more money and get more stuff, because it seems like every time I get something that I want, I feel this experience that we call happiness. And so I want to do more of that. I want to get more money and get more stuff. Then I can be more happy, right? The problem with that is it's a misunderstanding, because that's not happiness, it's gratification. You get something that you want, right? But it doesn't last long, because after you get it, you don't want it, right? And the experience of having it loses its value. It starts being common and ordinary. If you get a brand new car the first day, maybe the first week are exciting. After that, you start thinking about how much it's going to cost you to maintain this sucker, and hoping that you don't have an accident with it, right? So what became a pleasurable thing now becomes a negative experience. So it's just like eating food. When you eat food, you desire the food, right? So you want to be happy, so you want to fulfill the desire, and you get the food, and you eat the food, and you're gratified. We call that pleasurable gratification happiness. And so now we just keep pursuing that, which means we got to keep eating more food, get fatter, unhealthy, get more money to buy more stuff, which means work harder, work longer, right? Wear the body out, right? Have more stress about it, right? And just keep pursuing those dopamine hits. Keep pursuing those momentary experience of gratification, right? And as you continue to play that game, right, you're unwittingly being a sucker. You're unwittingly being a sucker. If you go to the casino, the reason that they take the money from most people, right, is because most people go there hoping and praying that they win enough money that they can be happy the rest of their life. That's why people play the lottery, because people believe if I get enough money, I can buy enough shit, I can never run out of being gratified. That's a hell of a way to have to live your life, right? And it works because the people that run casinos know all they have to do is let a few people win once in a while, and the rest of you will come and give us all your money. It's a beautiful situation if you own the casino, right? But people don't realize you're living your life like it's a casino. Every once in a while, you get a pleasurable experience. Every once in a while, you eat a meal and then you're satisfied and gratified. But it's only a matter of time before you're hungry again. It's only a matter of time before you're looking at the menu again, right? So this keeps you on a treadmill. It keeps you playing a sucker game where you only get gratification every once in a while and you never experience well-being and happiness. On the other hand, if you start to experience meditation, and because when you experience meditation, you're moving your attention away from this activity of the mind that keeps you in this dream, that keeps you suffering, keeps you chasing after the money and the material wealth. You move your attention away from that. Now I'm just experiencing the body breathing. Already things are simpler. I'm just experiencing the body breathing. And my identity is different because when I'm thinking, I think that I am who I think I am, which is my name, my personality, and my body. When I'm away from that and I'm aware of the body breathing, it's possible for me to notice my identity is the awareness. Because now that I'm not thinking, I'm free from that identity and I'm experiencing myself as the awareness of the body breathing. This is much simpler. And not only that, as I have more time as the awareness of the body breathing, it starts to dawn on me that when I'm in this state of meditation, I'm experiencing well-being. Now that's not right away when you first start practicing. You have to practice for a while before well-being starts to occur, but eventually it will start to occur and you're sitting there and you're experiencing this feeling of contentment, this feeling of peace, this feeling of satisfaction, this enjoyable warmth of making contact with your true nature. And once that starts to occur, right, then the motivation to practice meditation starts to become awake. You start to realize, oh my God, if I could experience this consistently, my life would be a different life. I'd actually be happy. What is real happiness? Real happiness is an experience of well-being that's always there when you're experiencing your true nature. The awareness that is your true nature is always happy, which means happiness is always available to you all the time, but you're not available for it because you're preoccupied. Like most human beings, your attention is being taken by your thoughts and your feelings, right? And your plans and your history, right? So you're living in that world that doesn't produce happiness. It's not possible for that to happen. But now you've discovered that there is a possibility for happiness. And if you practice meditation consistently over time, that happiness starts to show up. If you practice meditation over time, you start to be available in such a way that the recognition of your true nature can happen, become available when you're practicing meditation over time. Why? Because you're calming the mind and you're relaxing the body. And when the body wasn't calm and the mind wasn't relaxed, it was producing static all the time. It was producing thinking and static all the time and tension all the time. But as this calms down and starts to relax and the energy starts to settle and you get yourself grounded, it starts to become apparent to you that there is a possibility for well-being all the time, and you can start experiencing happiness and you can start experiencing your true nature, which is not a thought process. And as you experience your true nature, you experience that when you're experiencing your true nature away from thinking, nothing is happening. This is a very interesting thing if you can catch it. If you move your attention away from the thought activity, right, what's happening while you're paying attention to the body breathing? There's no thinking telling you what's happening, right? So what's happening? Nothing. That's interesting. If I move my attention away from the thinking activity, nothing is happening. But now wait a minute. Is that nothing empty? Is that nothing nothing? See, this is the thing. You know, we think that nothing is empty. But if you really pay attention when you're in that nothing, right, you experience that that nothing is not empty. That nothing is pregnant. That nothing is the potential for everything, isn't it? Yeah, isn't consciousness the potential for everything that manifests? In fact, the teachings tell us that everything that manifests is consciousness. So that nothing that we experience is everything at the same time. And that nothing that we experience is our true nature. It is not a thing. Nothing is not a thing. You are not a thing. You are not a thing. And so you begin to experience your true nature, which is always exactly the same. It's always calm. And from this base of reality, you can begin to look at the mind and see that its functioning is corrupt. You can look at the mind and see that it's telling me things that are not true about me. It's telling me things that are not true about life. It's telling me things that are not true about other people. And if I just follow that, I am going to be in conflict. I'm going to resist my life. I'm going to resist other people. I am going to struggle. I'm going to cope with it. I'm going to fight with it, and I'm going to resist it. And that's going to be my happy life. But if you move your attention away from that activity, you begin to realize none of that is necessary. Nobody is trying to kill you right now. You don't have to identify with a system that's not working very well. And if you can get yourself to be awake and seeing what's actually happening instead of what the interpretation of it is that the mind's giving you, then you have the opportunity to begin to get related to reality as it actually is, and to experience your true nature as you actually are. And that begins to produce an experience of easy living. It's not hard to live in the world when you're awake. It's not hard to live in the world when you're awake, and you can see your conditioning instead of be your conditioning. So all those limitations of your conditioning, right, no longer determine you. You're able to be an unlimited experience of yourself as awareness itself. You're able to experience being spontaneously happy, content, satisfied, and at peace at all times. That's what's available. That's why the ancient people practiced meditation, so they could get free from the tyranny of the mind, to get free from the programming of the mind that can produce nothing but survival and suffering, discontent, anxiety, and so forth and so on. When you say when you become your true nature, you hear the problem with that?
All right, so we are true. But we're more in tune with it. How about that?
No, it's not you're more in tune with it, because you see, what Christine is expressing is the barrier to these practices being successful. And that barrier is the personality that you've taken yourself to be will include itself in this process. And that's a problem, because the personality to take yourself to be doesn't exist. That's the problem. That's why the teachings tell us this isn't freedom for you, this is freedom from you. Freedom from who you took yourself to be that doesn't actually exist, that can never actually produce happiness, that will continually have you be upset and distressed. So that's the solution. Once you're experiencing your true nature, everything starts to fall in place, because that's real and that's true. When you're experiencing the state of mind that you're in, things can never fall into place, because it's just a program running in your head. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a psychologist,
Mhm.
and something called to you to reach out to a practice, and then you had your awareness so that you could teach it to others. What was that journey that you went from just being a college-trained doctor to spiritual, metaphysical?
Well, I'll say the same thing that everybody that wakes up says about it. I was suffering. I was suffering. And I didn't like the fact that I wasn't being successful in finding a way out of it. You know, in my case, that manifests itself in 4 marriages, right? So that's the thing. When you start to experience your life as an unworkable reality, well, what do you do? You know, what do you do? Just get on medication? You know, what do you do? So that was the motivation for me, and I started searching very early on, because I came from a very dysfunctional family. So my childhood was a nightmare, right? So when I was a teenager, the only thing I wanted to do was to not have the life that was going to give me. That was the only thing I wanted to do. I didn't know that much about meditation or awareness or anything, but I knew I didn't want to be like my parents or my brothers and sisters, right? So I set off in a process of trying to be successful. And I came from a family where my parents didn't even finish grade school, right? So the way I figured it out, if I'm going to be successful, I've got to get a PhD, right? So I did. I got a PhD, became a psychologist, you know, was the only person in my whole family history to ever go to college, let alone get a PhD. I figured, okay, then I'll be okay. I'll have made it, right? So I got a job, got a job working in a maximum security prison as a psychologist. And that only became more challenging in terms of dealing with the stress and pressure of that and talking to these people every day that are supposed to be the worst among us in terms of their behavior. So I did that for 12 years, right? And it was a very powerful learning process because I could see myself in these people. I could see myself in these people. I could see when I was talking to these people who did heinous things, serial killers, you know, people that did terrible things to other people, rapists, serial killers, and so forth and so on. When I was sitting and talking to them in confidence, I could identify myself with them. I could recognize that who I was in the most essential way was the same as they are. So what made us different? The only thing that made us different was their conditioning. And given their conditioning, it led to them behaving in a way that ended them up in prison. That's all. So it could have been me, it could have been you if your conditioning had been their conditioning, right? So that was a very powerful learning experience, and I discovered as a psychologist that as long as you limit treatment to the personality, you're not going to have much success. The personality is designed to survive even psychotherapy. Right? Even psychedelic drugs, it's designed to survive, right? So then it became apparent to me that there must be something else that's possible. I mean, I was aware of meditation from the time I was a young man, but then I got involved in my career and got involved in, you know, the life that we all live in terms of getting older, getting married, having children, all that jazz, right? And so that preoccupied me for a lot of time. It took a lot of energy to do all that, right? But I had studied meditation. I was aware of it. I understood it. I understood the teachings, right? But I was very frustrated because it didn't seem to really make a difference in my life. And I didn't understand that. I thought maybe I just haven't learned enough yet, like that. But then after I finished my career working in prisons, and during that career I was continuing to pursue happiness by getting more and more success. So I started out being a psychologist in a maximum security prison, and when I ended my career, I was in charge of the prison. Right, so I figured, now I must be able to be successful, right? Didn't change a goddamn thing in terms of what it was like to be me. So when I left that career and I focused my attention solely on this business of studying consciousness and meditation and so forth, and did some meditation training in Vipassana and Zen, and, you know, started to do practice consistently, that was about 15 years ago. Since then, I practiced every single day, and my life is a completely different life. And I am not who I was before I started. Literally, I am not who I was before I started. I didn't understand that the practice was necessary. You know, you can't just know about the truth and know about the possibility, and that's going to make a difference. You've got to do the practice to come out of the condition that you're in. And when I did the practice to come out of the condition that I was in, I woke up. I woke up.
How many retreats have you think you've been on?
I don't know exactly. I mean,
Do you do like 1 or 2 a year or no?
well, I mean, what the teachers tell us and what the teachings tell us is once you're established, once you have a meditation practice established, right, meaning you're doing it every single day without fail, that's not a question, right? Then once a year you should do a retreat, which is an intensive where you do meditation a lot each day for a set period of time. Right, to just deepen your practice and deepen your understanding, because when you do a retreat, there's a teacher there that works with you, that talks to you about your understanding and helps you to develop your practice. But the most important thing, what I want to get across here is the most important thing is to establish the practice. If you this is the bottom line, if you succeed in establishing 2 things, a formal practice that you do every day for a set period of time, right? And the traditions tell us about 30 minutes is a workable practice to get yourself into. In the Vipassana tradition, they say sit for an hour at a time. That's pretty challenging, right? And that's a different approach, right? But the approach we're talking about here is the mindfulness or the Zen approach, sitting for 30 minutes at a time. You can work yourself up to that 30 minutes, right? But if you sit for 30 minutes at a time every single day, so that's your formal practice, and then once you get into that, once you begin to experience the space of awareness in that practice, sometimes they call it Kensho and Zen, which means you've practiced enough that you're aware of your awareness. That's called Kensho, right? Once you get to that point, then you should start to do what's called the informal practice. And the informal practice is now you're practicing all the time. And it's different from the formal practice. The informal practice, you're going to practice brief moments of resting as awareness as often as possible in your everyday life. While you're living your life, while you're driving a car, while you're talking to people, while you're on the toilet, while you're eating. At the same time, as often as you can remember, just allow yourself to rest as awareness. What does that mean? Well, you already are the awareness, and the awareness is always at rest. So how hard can this be? You already are the awareness, and the awareness is always at rest. So all that really means is move your attention at some point during the day to include the awareness that is the ground of being, right? And from that ground of being, the dynamic reality is occurring. The thinking, the moving, the actions are occurring. Right? So to do that informally as often as possible, gradually what will happen, if you do that as often as possible for brief periods, gradually what will happen is the amount of time you're aware of being aware starts to open up and expand. And if you keep doing this over time, formal and informal, eventually what will happen is you will go to rest as awareness for a brief moment, and you will notice, oh, I was already resting as awareness. So now I don't have to practice. Now I am doing it naturally. Now I'm in the natural state. Right? And then your life can unfold from that, and it'll be a life worth living.